Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Virginia Lucy, Communications Director at the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, or NAPAWF. NAPAWF, with our partners, is dedicated to uplifting and building power with Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander women and girls so that we can assert full agency over our lives, our families, and our communities. On behalf of NAPAWF and on this last day of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this special storytelling hour. Together We Thrive, a discussion on economic justice for AAPI women. When considering the policies and laws that govern our everyday lives for AA and HPI women, the personal is political. Thus, today's event is our attempt to shine light on how we can start to bridge the gaps between our daily experiences and struggles and identify meaningful solutions that start to chip away at the inequities that our communities face. We'll be hearing from three leaders who, pulling from their own personal struggles and challenges, have channeled their energies into pushing for policy change. We'll be learning a lot together from their wisdom. To achieve true economic justice, we need to start with the basics: money, where in fact our wages and access to economic supports touch every part of our lives. We know that wages in the US have largely remained stagnant while basic living costs have skyrocketed. But even so, when considering the current state of AA and HPI women, we are often at the margins, where not only our gender and race, but also our socioeconomic and immigration status disproportionately affect our ability and those of our families to thrive. AA and HPI working women, and that includes full-time, part-time, and seasonal workers, on average earn 80 cents to every dollar earned by white, non-Hispanic men. Some of us will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 40-year career, up to $1 million plus over our lifetime. And disaggregated data shows that the wage gap is the widest for Burmese women earning 52 cents, Nepalese women earning 51 cents, and Bangladeshi women who earn as little as 49 cents to the dollar. We are overrepresented in frontline and low-wage jobs, especially in the retail, restaurant, and care industries, where there's often less ability to get time off, lower pay, and lack of health insurance. We're also often the primary breadwinners for our families and their primary caregivers, living in multi-generational households, carrying the burden for caring for children, elderly parents, and extended family. This all compounds the impacts on women who have little to no paid leave, limited childcare support, and other limited protections and resources in the workplace. Now, before I turn things over to my colleague Joy and our storytellers, I want to note for our audience that today's panelists and their personal stories will contain some content that you might find difficult or might evoke a challenging emotional, mental, or physical response in you. These topics include discussions of mental health and family trauma. And so we encourage all of you to please care for your well-being as you see fit. Step away if you need to, do whatever you need to take care of yourself. And if that happens, but you still have a question or would like to engage, I will drop my email address into the chat. And so you can contact me afterwards and we can see if we can answer your question or get you the information that you're looking for. Okay, so with all that background in mind, I'd like to introduce my colleague Joy Pettigrew to share a little more about today's guests and NAPAWF's work as part of our Gender Justice Collaborative.
Awesome. Thanks, Virginia. Hi, everyone. My name is Joy Pettigrew, and I work at NAPAWF as a Strategic Partnerships Manager. We're so excited that you've joined us for today's program. Last summer, NAPAWF launched the Asian American Pacific Islander Gender Justice Collaborative, and we launched this alongside 8 partner organizations across the country focused on advancing intersectional policies to help AAPI women and girls achieve equity and liberation. Collectively, we're building a gender justice movement that assembles around building collective power of API organizations to expand our reach and influence decision makers. An essential part of this work is centering the voices and lived experiences of AAPI women and communities. So today, our guests will be sharing their own personal stories and their powerful stories. Their rich experiences really bring to life key policy and systemic issues that impact AAPI and HPI women and impede them from achieving full economic justice. Before I introduce our first speaker, I just want to share a few housekeeping logistics and tips. We have 3 speakers who will be speaking with us, and at the end of our time, we have saved some time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the conversation today, you are welcome to put it into the Q&A window. It is not the chat function, it's slightly different, so look out for a Q&A window, and you can put your questions directly in there and we'll see them and be able to answer them at the end. We'll do our best to answer as many as possible for us together. Just so you know, today's panel is also being recorded and will be shared out to our email listserv. So if you're not already signed up to receive updates, you are welcome and invited to visit napawf.org and click on the sign up button at the bottom of the page to join. That way you'll not only get this recording, but also any future events and reports that NAPAWF puts out, and you'll get access to that. So thank you. All right, I am so delighted to introduce our first speaker today. Our first speaker is Nadia Hussain. Nadia is the co-founder of the Bangladeshi American Women's Development Initiative, or BODI. It's a community initiative empowering Bangladeshi women and girls in New Jersey. And a really awesome thing about Nadia is she also serves as senior campaign director, focusing on early learning policy with Moms Rising. She has a deep passion for connecting grassroots work to systemic change and reform and increasing the political involvement and representation of women and marginalized communities. Thank you so much for being here, Nadia.
Hello. Really quick, sorry, my son has to go potty. So I'm gonna tell you all he's going potty. Hi everybody, my name is Nadia Hussain, and when I put up my talking points, for some reason my screen goes off. So I don't know, that's kind of strange. I'm trying to stay on screen. Okay, I can see if I can. Am I still on screen, Joy?
Yes, you are. We can see you.
Okay, good. All right. So hi everybody, my name is Vera Nadia Hussain. I am a New Jersey-based mom of 3, Zakir who is 9, Emmy here who is 4, and Sania who's 1.5, and they're all with me here today. I'm representing the Bangladeshi American community through the Bangladeshi American Women's Development Initiative, where we uplift women and children in New Jersey of Bangladeshi descent through organizing, advocacy, and system support, as well as sisterhood. I'm also the senior campaign director at Moms Rising, a national online and on-the-ground organization of more than 1 million members, along with their Spanish language community, Mama Con Poder. We work to improve health and family economic security and discrimination against women and mothers, and build a nation where everyone can thrive. So Bangladeshi American women face the worst pay gap disparity of any ethnic demographic. On average, we only make 49 cents on the dollar paid to white men, and the extreme wage discrimination causes too many of us to struggle to put food on the table, pay for housing and transportation, cover childcare, and save for our children's education, for retirement, and for the emergencies every family faces. And I want to point out that the importance of data disaggregation, especially for my community, is so essential, because we wouldn't even have this information unless there was disaggregation. There's a great harm that the model minority myth causes the Bangladeshi community and other Asian American communities. Whenever Bangladeshi Americans are grouped into larger, more general Asian American constituencies, or are incorrectly categorized as Indian American, our struggles are essentially erased and made invisible. So it's just so critical to prioritize representative, comprehensive data that allows all of our community to be seen and heard. Women in my community handle literally everything. We are not only the primary caregivers of children, but are often responsible for elder care, as many of us live in multi-generational households. Bangladeshi women are also part of the workforce, many working more than one job on top of their care duties. Like so many others in the country, we suffer greatly because lawmakers have failed to create the kind of care infrastructure that really every society needs. And as a mom of three, I very much live like the childcare struggle. Like many in the Bangladeshi Asian American community, my mom was a childcare provider for me when my eldest was born, because then my husband and I just couldn't afford childcare, and she had to leave behind my mentally ill father to do this because our small apartment just couldn't hold all of us. She would drive 4 hours round trip to help me, and also go back weekly to check on him. I'm forever grateful to her for her labor and sacrifice that she made to provide this care. I know it took a toll on her to do this. And with my second child, my mom wasn't able to provide as much support due to her age. And so I work full time from home while watching my son. And though I'm very grateful to have a supportive workplace, I was constantly overcome with guilt that I was not providing him with interaction and social emotional activities that he needed to really excel. And I wish I had the options, but I just couldn't afford them. And now with my third child, my next door neighbor is able to watch her part-time, but she charges a very affordable rate. And I'm just fortunate that a stay-at-home mom of four is next door and is willing to do this at a lower price. And if she wasn't here, I really don't know what I would be doing for childcare. So it really the bottom line is it shouldn't be this hard to raise a family, to care for and support the people we love, to afford the things that we need. We know the solutions to these problems. We need quality, affordable childcare. We need to really address these in really intense wage disparities, so that businesses can get the employees they need and our kids can thrive. We need to pay our childcare workers living wages and reasonable benefits, and we need a path of citizenship for our immigration care workers. And let's remember that childcare, bridging these wage gaps, doing data disaggregation so we actually have the information we need, isn't just beneficial to our communities. When our communities thrive, our nation thrives. And so, and we urge Congress, for example, to appropriate $16 billion for childcare stabilization, and pay the Paycheck Fairness Act. The Bureau of Labor Statistics and other federal agencies can find opportunities to listen to Bangladeshi communities, enforce anti-discrimination measures, and shine a spotlight on wage and other disparities that are causing so much harm in our communities. So thank you all for listening. I know that if we work together, we can build a care infrastructure, we can address these wage gaps, we can get our community seen and heard. So thank you so much, NAPAWF, for giving me the platform to do that.
Thank you, Nadia. Thanks for sharing that. And, I think you being with your three kids really represents some of the things that embody some of the things that you're talking about being a working mom and some of the challenges there. And so it was great that we got to see them. So thank you. I did have a question for you. I know you touched on some of the policy initiatives and things that are needed, and I'm curious if you have anything you want to expand on about what would true economic justice look like for the Bangladeshi American community and the women you work for and your role at Body.
Yeah, I mean, every issue that is present, right, in the United States, so the economic issues, pay disparities, the cost of living, that it all disproportionately falls on the shoulders of not just many of our communities that are marginalized because of economic forces, because of systemic racism, but also because of it falls disproportionately on mothers across the board, especially Bangladeshi mothers, mothers from immigrant backgrounds, and providing things like making sure that there's childcare support, making sure that there's paid leave. I know so many Bangladeshi moms that had to leave the workforce because they had a sick parent or their child was sick and they just didn't have. I mean, sometimes you're working under the table, which maybe the Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't always capture that, but even working in let's say a Dunkin' Donuts or in a store, there's just not those protections in place, right? And so they end up having to they lose a job that they need. They need that money for their families. I mean, it's impossible to survive in a 2-income household, even if you're quote unquote middle class. So making sure there's paid leave, making sure there's protection, there's sick leave protections, and not just protections. There needs to be, because protection is nothing if someone's losing their income, if they're losing their economic security. And the childcare piece is just so critical. That is a number one factor for enabling women to work, for enabling women to stay in the workforce and contribute to not just the economy, but to bring home what they need for their families. And so those investments wouldn't even trickle down. We need the infrastructure investments without those infrastructure investments, we are just going to be drowning. It is just going to be a constant struggle. And with the data disaggregation, with the U.S. Census, Dowdy did a lot of work around the census to reach out to our communities, and that's great. But I just think any government entities, even organizations, even funders, right, that give money for data, and universities that do this, there needs to really be a commitment to, like, when they're doing any data on Asian American communities or communities of color, to parse this out, because we cannot ask for something if if they don't even know we don't even know what the issue is, right, in a quantitative sense. So
yeah, no, absolutely. We need the data. We need to know what our communities are facing in order to be able to provide those resources. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Nadia. I think some of what you're touching on here at the end is actually a great pivot to our next speaker. And we'll circle back to you at the end with our Q&A time together. So I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, who is Oogie. Oogie is here to share her personal story and is on staff with CanWin in Chicago. CanWin is a community organization here that works to eradicate gender-based violence through comprehensive survivor-centered services, education, and outreach to Asian American communities and beyond. On top of working part-time with CanWin, Oogie also works full-time in the financial service industry and is incredible all around. So thank you for being here, Oogie.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me and sharing my story today. So my name is Ogi. In 2014, me and my family immigrated to United States from Mongolia to pursuit of the American dream. We sought opportunities, but the journey has been challenging. I'm a mother of 3 and grandmother of 2. And upon our arrival, finding employment is so hard. So like many Mongolian women in Chicago, I become a nail technician. Even I had a degree, and even I was working in it, sales department, marketing department back home. So as a nail technician, the hours were so long, from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And because I'm the beginner, I got paid very little, $50 a day I started, and plus tips. My husband worked as a kitchen helper, also earning similarly. So balancing work and life is kind of tough. So our youngest child was only 2 years old, requiring expensive daycare. Often I had to rush back to pick her up, or sometimes my husband, and that's why I had to cut down my working hours. And there is so many Mongolian women in my community who are single mothers or working mothers. Sometimes they have 2 kids, 3 kids. They struggle greatly with the cost of daycare, while also they needing to work long hours to cover expenses and provide to their family. Despite this, they also face the challenge of needing to be present for the children. Feeling the strain, me and my husband both transitioned to driving Uber. While the income was slightly better, the hours were growing, sometimes spanning 12 to 14 hours, including late nights and weekends. I encountered challenges, including accidents and sometimes uncomfortable interaction with passengers. Some expressed concern about my safety, not understanding the necessity of my working late hours. This wasn't the life I envisioned. Expenses piled up, childcare, rent, and everyday necessity. They're leaving little room for financial stabilities. Nevertheless, we preserved the driven by the need to support our family. Me and my husband, we lost our father so early, even when we drive in Uber, we were involved few accidents, and it made me realize the importance of protecting our family. That is why I started looking into life insurance options, And in the process, I discovered that I could be the someone who helps others to find the financial services they need. Now I have found a new role as a financial professional specializing in life insurance and retirement planning. Yet even in this position, I face obstacles. Some doubts my expertise, questioning if a white guy could explain financial matter better. It's disheartening to encounter skepticism solely based on race and gender. I strive to educate and empower others regardless of these biases, as expertise knows no bounds of race and gender. In addition to being a financial service professional, I also work as a multilingual advocate at Canvin, and I'm deeply passionate about my work at Canvin, where I contribute to ending gender-based violence in our community. So this is my story. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ugi. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I think it really strikes me your journey and how you became a financial professional. I know something that isn't you have mentioned in our conversations that was involved with that was that you had to take some intense licensing exams. So you did that while working the crazy hours that you did, and I think it's really incredible. And given your experiences and your story, you shared about how you were able to become an entrepreneur and help other women in your community find financial stability. I'm curious what kinds of supports or resources you think would have helped you on your path early on.
So, of course, the child care, while like taking care of my kids and my grandkids, they are 3 and 7. So one of us have to give up in order to take care of them. Even they go to daycare or the school, my daughter is 11. After that 3 o'clock, we have to pick them up or help them to study or cook, right? So and then we decided to take the turn, but my flexibility, I sometimes I do, but in my case, my husband taking care of our grandkids and my daughter. So in our community, same thing. Husband drive a truck driver. If they are truck drivers, the wife stay home, they take care of the kids. Even they go to the child care. So for my cases, my husband taking care of them, and then I work. Also, I work at Canvin, and then I work with a financial professional. But in our community, it's the same thing. I usually see them, even they are childcare. The childcare is very expensive, but sometimes the government assists a little bit. They still find the expensive, and the affordability is still really challenging. And sometimes even I heard about the availability, the childcare availability. There's a lot of kids in one, like 20 kids. I know there is some certain amount has to take care of them, but the quality also, the childcare quality is the one thing we have to find. For example, there is my grandson started going to the Ukrainian daycare. The cost is so expensive, but the food is good, and we have to pay more. But later, my daughter was let him out to go to normal daycare. But so the cost and the affordability and availability, also the quality is very important. And in order to make those happening, we have to work hard and earn more. But yeah, those are challenges we are facing now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm hearing the theme with both you and Nadia of not just infrastructure for childcare, but also quality quality childcare and the
Yeah.
challenges of cost with that. So thank you so much, Ugi. I appreciate what you shared, and we'll see you at the end again for Q&A.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, our next and final guest speaker is Lasami. Lasami is a project manager with the Laotian American National Alliance, or LANA. LANA is dedicated to advancing the social and economic well-being of the multi-ethnic Laotian American community in the United States. Lasami is also the founder of a small business called Good and Golden, based in Denton, Texas, and she runs an interactive pop-up dining experience, which I can't wait to experience hopefully sometime, where people get to experience the art of cooking aspects and elements of Laotian food. So welcome, Lasami. We're so delighted to have you.
Thank you, Joy. Sabai di, or hello in Lao. My name is Lasmi Ketapong, and I work with the Laotian American National Alliance as their program manager. My family is from Laos, and if you know a Lao person, it's likely that they are a child of refugees or a refugee themselves, because of the conflicts in Southeast Asia in the mid-20th century. Because of this, Lao and Lao American women started new lives in the United States with very little. And in the present, we are seeing the effects of these complex, difficult beginnings. My mother is one of these women. I witnessed her in a household where she shouldered the responsibility for almost everything, maintaining a job on weekdays, maintaining our household, and taking care of myself, my siblings, and eventually my siblings' children as well. My late father had complex chronic PTSD and could not be around people, so he didn't work. He couldn't be around his own family members as well, and he was eventually incarcerated for violence in our home for a few years. When he was around, he was the parent who took care of the minors in my family. My mother was the breadwinner for most of my childhood, and my siblings and I would contribute to the household income when we could. And for me, that was at the age of 5, when I could count the materials that we assembled into gift bag packages to be sold in retail stores. This work was contract work that my mother brought home from the job where she worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. She raised 5 children and worked an hourly paid job, an incredible feat. And after over 3 decades with the same company, she still doesn't have a salaried position with them, nor has she ever had health care or benefits associated with the privilege of a salaried position. My family faced challenges such as language barriers and access, the cost of childcare, lack of cultural competency in healthcare, and more, all while dealing with an oppressor and abuser within our own home who grappled with undiagnosed and untreated mental illnesses and substance use disorder. Unfortunately, the story is not unique to our family, which is why I'm here. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thanks, Lasami. I invite us, you shared some hard things that you and your family face, and so invite us to take a deep breath together. I know your story and your mother's story touches on many of the challenges that face. Curious, what are some other specific challenges you might want to lift up around challenges that's facing the Southeast Asian women specifically, and even more specifically, the Lao community?
Sure. We recently published a disinformation report, and we held 4 focus groups across the nation to gather this data for the report. And there was a theme just across the board that caregiving and taking care of our aging parents, our elders, is a challenge that we face. And so we need funding and culturally competent, culturally bolstered caregiving, and solutions for making this happen, making this possible. Just the language access as it relates to education, healthcare, and elder care was a huge concern for the Gen Z and the millennials and the elders themselves. So that's something that we are working to improve.
Thanks, Lasmi. Really appreciate that. All right, I'm going to transition soon to do a Q&A. Thank you for your time, Asmi. But before that, just want to highlight a few policy initiatives that NAPAWF, together with our Gender Justice Collaborative, is working on. So Uji, Nadia, and Lasmi's stories highlight like real lived experiences of some key policy initiatives that we have been focusing on. And we've recently released an economic justice report, an executive summary, and the rest of the report is in process. But some of the policies that we're really trying to push decision makers to prioritize are number one, the importance of disaggregated data. I know a few of us have already talked about that. We need, in order to be seen and to have policies that service, we need to be counted, right? And so we're really pushing disaggregated data, which will help us ensure better policy solutions tailored to our differing needs, the differing needs of our communities. The other policy priority for us is really thinking about funding and funding solutions for community-based organizations. And some of the work with our partners have really exposed and shown, and many of us here probably on this call know that many of the economic mobility of our communities are benefited by local on-the-ground community organizations that know the needs of our community members the best and are able to resource and provide. And so we're really thinking in how do we push more funding for community-based organizations who are doing this critical work. Another policy piece that we're really focusing on is the necessity of fair living wages and decent work conditions for frontline API women who are working in the workforce, so that we can live with dignity, so that we can thrive. And I think one policy that Nadia mentioned was the Paycheck Fairness Act. And I think one interesting thing about that act too is also providing resources to train and educate workers on how do you even do things like advocate for yourself to have higher wages? How do you advocate for yourself professionally? So resources and training like that. And I think finally, like just the role of how do we support the care economy? I know that was mentioned a lot, and it's mentioned a lot because it's so critical to our economic mobility, our economic well-being. So really thinking about pushing lawmakers to think about and implement more infrastructure and stronger infrastructure for the care economy. So these are some priorities, and I think more resources will be posted about it over time, and if you follow some of our reports, it'll touch on some of these pieces. So now I will transition us to a Q&A with our storytellers. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please you can put your questions into the Q&A section, and I'll give us a few moments to collect our thoughts. I think as questions come in, one thing I would love to ask all of us is, and whoever feels like they want to answer it is welcome to do that. But I think the question would be, how would greater access to disaggregated data really impact your advocacy work, or more personally, the lives of your family members? I know you touched on that a little bit, but curious if you want to expand on how access to disaggregated data will impact your community.
So Joy, I could say that, I know I pointed that out when I spoke, but, Bowdy, when we talk to anybody, whether it be elected officials, we talk to funders, anything, even other just partners, and people say, well, how many Bangladeshi community members are there in New Jersey, or in Patterson, New Jersey, which is kind of the area we're at, and we're literally like, we have no idea. Our the empirical information to back that up. I mean, you can walk down the street in Bangladesh Boulevard in the middle of Patterson and see that it's just chock full of our community. But
I think NYU did a study on, they got some of the information on the Bangladeshi community in New York, and if you look at Wikipedia, it's like 500,000. They said there's like 500,000 Bangladeshis, which to me just does not sound like it's accurate. I think we're way more Bangladeshi people right now out there, and we're not being counted. So, I mean, it's just so important because we have nothing almost right now as a Bangladeshi community. There's so many of us, and there are so many needs. So it's just, where do you really even start to address something if you don't even have the information on what the issue actually is?
Thanks, Nadia. Yeah, and I think one thing that comes to mind too is you touched on the model minority myth earlier. I think if we don't have the data, the narrative about our communities are inaccurate, right? Because there's such a significant wage gap between different communities that are represented in API. And so I think there's a lot of narrative work that we have to do too, and disaggregated data is also key to that. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else want to add to answering the question of how will greater access to disaggregated data specifically impact your community?
Yeah, I kind of want to echo some of Nadia's points just about if we don't see specifically like Lao Americans in the charts and in the information that's out there, we don't know where we need to focus our efforts. We don't know how to advocate specifically for what their needs are. Just related to the model minority myth, there are, I think, only 14% or so of Lao Americans have achieved a degree in higher education, and that, of course, influences career path and trajectory. But it's, statistics for Asian Americans would have you believe that that's not the case. And so when we're able to really pull out or extract like what Lao Americans are facing economically, educational attainment wise, and so on, we're able to advocate for and speak up for our people in that way. AAPI data just came out with a new tool. I think it's called something like the Data Explorer, but you're able to look at every state and like really drill down and find like how many Lao people are here, how many Hmong people. And for us, it's also really interesting with our multi-ethnic community. We also need to look at like Tai Dam and Lu and Yu Mian folks as well. So it's really interesting. There's been improvement in even just being able to identify ourselves. But we've got a long way to go.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and flagging the API data as well.
So for me, Mongolian community is like a new community to United States, like maybe like 30 years maximum. So, but we are growing. And for example, there is a rough number, like 45,000 people in the US. And Chicago is the most of them here. We have a council. So we don't have the center for only for Mongolian community, but we are trying to establish one now, and we really need the data aggregation information. We need how many of them have single moms, what they need, what's the community need. And we're trying to do our, even with the government, the Mongolian government assistance, but it's not working. People hide, I don't know what they motivates them. So we need more on that statistic. We really need that information be out. How many people we don't know. And there is a Inner Mongolian also. And the Buryatia, and Kazakh people, they are part of Mongolia. Some of them from Russia, but we don't know yet. So there is a lot of information and statistic we need. We really need that segregation. I agree with you.
Yeah, thanks, Ugi. Thanks for pointing that out. Even the diversity within folks who come from Mongolia as well, that really stands out to me. And in terms of needs and resources, I would love to ask, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just to open this question up to everyone, what kinds of supports or resources do you think would have helped you on your path early on? And yeah, for you, Lasmi, what would have helped your mom? What would help your community members? Curious what y'all would say.
It could be like information center, like for example, whoever come to US have to find a job, have to file the social security, the lot of information we need there. We can find it online, or there's a lot of information out there, but specifically culturally, some people don't speak English, right? So we need that information we need the language access pretty much. And because of that, people can't find a job, they can't find the place to live, or starting a business. They want to start the business to become entrepreneur, but they don't know how to start. What's the tax strategies? So we started doing this, the education in our community in Mongolian language, but how many people access to that? So maybe the information is really needed. All sorts of.
Yeah, definitely. Information, resources in language around how to access resources and thrive economically as well. Does anyone else want to add to what resources would have helped early on?
Yeah, I'll hop in there. Truly, I think language access would have helped my mom so much. And when you first arrive here, it's like I don't remember exactly what arrival was like for my family from their stories, but they basically kind of found other Lao people. And so there's this community, but there are also things within our community, like not addressing mental health or not addressing things going on in the home. And you kind of like, I've seen people in our community just be stuck where they are. There's no path for mobility or a path out of the situations they're in. So a little rambly there, but yes, I just think that there's just upon arrival, there could have been a better system, or just more of a support network, also outside of just the community that is always traumatized and has just landed in a new place. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I can also chime in. I mean, one thing, I mean, on top of yes, totally agreeing with everything other panelists have shared, but also, for my community, I feel like just kind of, even like having systemic knowledge, right? Systems, information, just even the barrier of how things work in this country, or even what rights they have, right? I mean, civil rights, like where could you go if there's employment discrimination? Where could you what can you do if you see something or something happens? Or I mean, that's the thing, like there is just so often things would happen, and there might have been something in place that could have helped a situation, and we just didn't know, or there was a sense of confidence or empower or feeling empowered enough to be able to stand up and kind of be able to stand up for yourself or stand up for your community or basically demand the rights that are yours, right? And so I wish that had been there. On top of the language access, obviously language is part of it, but even just like, for example, even if you or I, like people on the call, want to apply for SNAP benefits, right? It is really, really complicated. And I would say like maybe many of us speak English or are comfortable with English and maybe have been here for a few years or have grown up here. And it's still that challenging. I mean, so it's just systemic knowledge, systemic information, systemic education, confidence, empowerment, support, knowing your rights. That would have been very helpful.
I'd like to add one thing, because of the cultural difference. So, for example, how we raised back in Mongolia, and now when we have a grandchildren, it's totally different. The cultural and light bank is normal in our country, but here the DCFS take the children. And so last week a week ago I've been in participating DCFS the meeting and sharing listening. One of the presentation was that was Asian American, and because how they raise back in home, they raise the kids here same, but the DCFS staff needs to be understand in order to get the children like talk, because of the language barrier or the cultural difference. There is so many conflicts. So same thing, education is very important when they arrive, about the school system, and also the regular normal thing here is totally different in Asian American Pacific Islander community. So
Absolutely. Generational differences and navigating that as well is definitely a challenge. Thanks for adding that, Nikki. There's a comment in the Q&A from Gemily. I'm going to read it and see if I can address it for us together. The comment was, thank you so much for creating and sharing the space. Thank you so much to our storytellers for sharing such powerful stories. Oftentimes, policymakers lean towards quantitative data and numbers, but there is power in qualitative data such as storytelling and narratives. This captures the data that are missed by regular data collection methods. It also captures important data from communities that are not highly represented. As an example, in our labor data, it can help capture employment that may be off the books. How can we elevate our stories and advocate for policymakers to acknowledge the power of qualitative data? And I think I'll address this first by just sharing a little bit of, like, this is something that NAPAWF absolutely resonates with and sees the value of, which is part of why we've gathered together this AAPI Gender Justice Collaborative, right? We need more than data also in policymaking. We need voices, we need stories, and we need people who are actually doing work on the ground, right? And so part of our collaborative work is to meet with decision makers and have roundtable conversations and share stories. And that's something that we did earlier. Actually, it feels like a while ago, but it was just at the end of April, where we met with decision makers. We met with KPAC. We held a briefing at KPAC, really sharing these stories and really emphasizing real life experiences. And so that is something that we're trying to do and experimenting with. I think as thinking about how do we build power, build a collective of API organizations who hold space for and serve the needs of the most directly impacted API women immigrants in our country. And so that's one of the ways that we're tackling it. I know also we're doing some qualitative reports. I believe Lana has done a report too. And for NAPAWF, part of our collaborative members and body have been a part of our qualitative report around barriers to economic justice. And we're releasing that this year, really to highlight some real stories. And so, yeah, we really resonate with that. And that's some of how we're addressing it. A few other comments here. One is, as a librarian at Brooklyn Public Library, I could advocate for expanding services to Bangladeshi communities with numbers on things like interests in GED or ESOL classes and the need for Bangla language programs and materials. I clearly see the economic need of Bangladeshi community here, but the city and library sees the Bangladeshi population as model minorities, unfortunately, and it is likely other AE communities are framed the same. And then a second comment is being an adult immigrant myself, single mother, etc., but I have degrees from the US. Why not ask those community members who are successful to educate those that just arrived on things like taxes, finding a jobs, etc.? Thank you both for your comments. I'm gonna see if our group has any responses to these realities. I know they're not direct questions, but curious if we have responses or thoughts to add.
I will kind of comment on those comments and address a little bit of the first question that you answered, Joy. I do want to thank NAPAWF for bringing us together in this space. This is a clear example of how we share our stories and really get into the details and paint a picture of what our lives are like as Asian Americans, Lao Americans, you know. We are working on gathering quotes and stories from Lao Americans about their experiences in higher education, and by that I mean, were you guided by anyone? Are you the first in your family to attend college or university? What was that like? And also ask about whether or not they have feelings around affirmative action and that kind of thing. So we're working to get those stories, and then we will work on sharing them. It is a long game, and it's kind of addressing the model minority comment where it appears a certain way because we're looking at aggregated data. We're not breaking down specifically different populations and demographics. So keep it up. I also wanted to note that CRAG has a training. It's called the Leadership and Advocacy Training that invites Southeast Asian Americans to gather for a couple of days, learn how to tell their stories and relate their stories to advocating for policies. And that has been, I think they've been doing it for 25 years. And that is something that I attended last summer. And it has empowered me to, one, believe that my story does matter, and two, be able to connect it to policy issues and say, this is why it matters to me, and this is what you can do to improve the livelihoods of my people.
Thanks, Lasmi.
Thank you so much for the comments. And yeah, we are doing same thing. Of course, there's a lot of educated people here and they have degrees from US or different other countries, but still it's not like accessible for everybody. Even we out there talking or in-person meeting or training, Zoom meeting, but not everybody is accessible. Also, they don't know, still we need the center or some kind of the collect data in order to work towards it, right? So that's what I would like to mention. And in Chicago, I'm from Chicago, and we have a majority of Mongolian population here, and we work with the library too. So high school or middle school kids, their parents, even we have Mongolian library section. So thank you for the Glenview Public Library. So they are able to buy some books for Mongolian community. So it's really necessary in order to save, keep the Mongolian language. Kids not forget us.
Yeah. Thanks, Ugi. Well, I know we are wrapping up on time soon, but Nadia, did you want to add anything?
just that, qualitative, the stories are, data is wonderful. We need it, but it's a little faceless, right? It doesn't really give life to the everyday experience. And so, the qualitative piece is just so crucial. And, I think for me, I will see, I can only speak for behalf of my personal experience of growing up in my community, that there's a sense of, you don't share your problems out. Problems stay within the family. There's sometimes can be a sense of shame of like, no, we keep our problems inside. We don't want to like the community to talk or whatever. We don't want people to see the struggle, right? We want to just kind of present a strong face or a good face. But I think that, maybe as time is going on, or maybe younger generations are realizing the value of being able to speak their truth, right? And disrupting narratives that are out there around like model minority myths, or sharing the histories out of migration and war and coming here as a refugee and living in different kinds of communities and not being just what is perceived out there. And I think, a big part of the qualitative data and facilitating and being able to cultivate storytelling is about building trust, right? Building trust within our community, teaching our community, trainings, and kind of demonstrating that there's a different way of looking at it, right? That it's not just about shame or putting, like, if it is making you look bad to be out there, right? It's that there's something powerful about that. So sometimes it is about also addressing some cultural norms, or like trying to like look at something differently, right? That our can also evolve as they're.
Yeah, thanks for naming that. And I think that's some of the work we can do internally in our own communities too, to normalize storytelling. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it to Virginia to wrap us up. And I really appreciate all your storytelling. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joy. And, just again, a huge thank you to Uki, Lasami, and Nadia for joining us today, and also just for the generosity of sharing your stories with everyone. To Joy and Nadia's point just a second ago, like putting faces and real life experiences to the issues that we're talking about is so important. So thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for joining us today and for the questions. I just want to take a really quick second to highlight some of our recent research findings that support a lot of what we're talking about today. For those of you who are interested, NAPAWF is part of Intersections of Our Lives, which is a collaborative made up of 3 women of color-led national reproductive justice organizations. So with our partners In Our Own Voice and National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, Intersections focuses on addressing civil rights, justice, reproductive health, and equality issues driven by the intersectional lived experiences of women of color. And so we just released some polling around women of color voters and what their priorities are. And rising costs and concerns about the economy are major priorities for women of color voters, including AAPI women, with a close second being women's rights, which encompass a whole host of things. And so these are the issues that are driving people to vote and to be civically engaged. And so we just want to name that. And if you want to learn more about that polling and that just what women of color voters are really looking at this year during this election year, I would encourage you to go to intersectionsofourlives.org and you will find all of the information there. And also we have fact sheets there, including AAPI specific fact sheets that have been translated into Korean, simplified Chinese, Samoan, Tongan, Vietnamese, Hindi, and Khmer. And thanks to our translation partners at SoCal Pacific Islander Community Response Team, we can say that as a historic first, we have for the first time, translated into Tongan, a resource that has RJ issues highlighted. And so we're so thrilled about that. And just, as a parting sentiment, I know we're over time. I just want to thank everyone for being here and, have a great rest of your day and happy AAPI Heritage Month.